Thank you, Carell. I had to really drop that. You're taller than you looked. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we're all glad that we're not following you on here. I felt like I just watched a TED Talk on analytics. That was terrific. Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes, I think, Richard, to take questions. I thought it was a really nice overview of both solutions for government agencies who are producers of open data and some of the platforms that are available, as well as solutions for those of you who are consumers of open data in terms of being able to pull the data sets in and to be able to analyze. I think some of the points that were mentioned talked about the consumer experience, the user-citizen experience, and trying to make that as easy as possible for them, but also the importance of having solutions that are scalable within an organization and having the right types of skill sets within your organization in order to make the data publishable and available to citizens. I am going to open the floor up to questions, and I'm not sure if Ross is running around with the iPad that has the questions that were entered online, but we'll start with audience questions first.
Yes.
Yes, sir. And who has the microphone? Coming around.
Hello. I have a question basically to all of the panelists. For several years or decades, we had available what we call document management systems. Because the whole idea of storing information, we had document management systems and we had also databases. So these were two different worlds, let's say. Because we treated data as something different and document as something different. Now with the advent of the open data, let's say revolution, do you have a feeling or do you have some insights to share with us whether these two different technology worlds, let's say of databases and document management systems, somehow converge, or what is your idea, what is your cuts on this? Thank you.
I could take that. Basically, you still have a need for both. For instance, now for data management, you have SharePoint, like for instance Microsoft SharePoint, which is a great tool because you still need those reports and distribution report and storing it for your organization inside the enterprise. Now, if you want to use tools to scan and text that information, you can still do that. However, the document management systems are still valid. We still need it to store, for instance, within an organization, store presentations such as this in a central repository, information. And you also have your traditional transactional-based information that in a relational format. And of course, you have big data where it's logs, it's videos, it's all kinds of other types of information which are static that, you know, as well illustrated, you can take that information, match it up, use mathematics and analytics to it, and have it give you a story as well.
Any of the other panelists want to respond as well?
Just from my perspective, I mean, the document management system and the database have specific tasks to perform, so I don't see those two converging. But from a decision-making perspective, as long as you have access to both, your decision-making will not be hampered. So you can take a holistic view of decision-making, comfortably using any of these sources of data. I mean, document management increasingly becoming an important source, especially in telco, and telco in Saudi, that we're using one customer's manually enter data in PDF format at the moment to start enriching the customer experience for them. And that is all stored in a document management system, but the document management system just becoming another source of data that can be used in the analysis.
Okay, next question. I think we have a question up. We have two up here, but we'll go with Geertz first.
Well, some of the presentations raised quite some privacy issues. It's been the discussion in the previous session as well also. I completely agree that if you analyze collective behavior, you can have interesting predictions of what the government should do. But once you start individualizing them and predict how I'm going to do at school, how my health is going to be, and I know it's happening. Insurance companies are very interested already, and what's happening with Facebook now buying this application to check how much I move is getting quite worrisome. And I don't want it. And our tax administration in Belgium once announced very proudly that they were going to check on everybody's Facebook behavior to see if you're not richer than you are. And I, as a good anarchist, I just started typing about which of my 5 Ferraris I would use to go to my villa in Monaco, which I don't have any. But it's quite an issue, and I am quite worrisome. And people will start to revolt against it and lie. And one of the questions yesterday in the was if you trust public data. Well, I wouldn't, because I've been lying to my government as well. Not me personally, but citizens and enterprises do lie. And they sometimes call it fraud, and sometimes they call it creative. But that's a bit the question.
Yep.
Let's keep the line between open data, big data, and privacy, personal data, quite strict, and not like it's been happening today, mix it all together. It's not good.
Thanks for that comment. I think we're all very well aware of the privacy convergence issues across platforms. Was there a question right there? He had his hand up earlier, actually.
Thank you. I just have 2 questions to Carl, because part of the question have been in mind. It was related to privacy, and the other issue on the pace that the government take a decision on. Is it the individual data or what we have been seeing on the Facebook or on the official data? Over the presentation, we always talk about open data, and then the open data as a definition, or it's also open. But for me, I think it's part of the point, Carl. Can we just depend on math to tell us the story, or it will tell us a story? I feel that it tells us a story. So another mathematician may rebuild the figures or the numbers and tell another story. So the government, what are the bases to take their decision as a rational base? And then also the comparability. Maybe, for example, in some country, completely automized, then the Facebook or Twitter, it's completely used. But in other countries, no. The other part is the definition. If you go to the unemployment through Facebook, then you are destroying the ILO, for example, definition for unemployment, which is not captured by the Facebook or Twitter or whatever the point. The other dimension is the quality. I know a lot of friends, they have xx001@yahoo.com. Who is that person? If we can look at the statistics, who are giving the right data, the right name on Facebook, then by law or by default, then there is nothing said privacy. Because I don't imagine that, for example, Sufyan will say, no, don't show my data or micro data, and on Facebook my photo and my family and my wife and my kids and my whatever are for public. So how it's come that you have to manage all this issue? So I think for the issue of the open data, and this is for the solution company, that there is not a gap, but there should be what we call it an ethical and social whatever agreement, that how can we combine the business-oriented, as we are not against gaining the profit from providing solution, but also how can we have a phasing out or having an in-house capacity building for the institution to make sure that the solution is in line with the available data they have. They have building their own experience to run the show at the end of the day, and also to ensure that garbage in, garbage out is not also in line. That the more they improve their data, the more they improve the input for the solution or the system, and the outcome, the story, and then the project or the decision, policy-making decision is improved and enhanced. Thank you.
So I'm not sure that there is a question in there, but it's an interesting point of discussion in terms of correlation and causation and the context in which you actually do your analytics. Would anyone like to follow up on that and speak to the contextual nature of interpreting the data and applying ethics and privacy into that?
Sure. You know, I'd like to second that. There's definitely a fuzzy line between opt-in and opt-out. But what we see in greater volume these days is when you go to verify an account, you have to provide some other communication factor, either an SMS or an email. And it doesn't matter if this data is anonymous or not. It still has to make that circular passback and prove that it's not a bot. And so if some point in that transaction you can bind a real user either to an account or some real life scenario, then I think that there's some utility in that from a government and enterprise perspective. I think there's a way to go with the privacy mountain on the consumer side because by and large I hear more negative rhetoric about all the privacy barriers that exist. So yeah, I definitely think that those concerns will need to be addressed ongoing.
Yeah, one comment about the privacy. It's kind of like the horse already left the barn, and this is a personal statement. My statement is that whatever you put online, it's available to the world, whether you like it or not. Somebody will have access to it, and somebody will look at it, whether you know it or you do not know it. I think as we look at generations, the younger folks, they're used to it. For them, it's not a private issue. For us, or for me, it may be. But when they're growing up with that environment, it's not going to be an issue for them. Actually, they're going to expect someone to know everything about them so they can provide every service that they want. They want to know, like, if I'm walking by a mall and they know, you know, somebody checked out, they want new sneakers and the sneakers are there, they're going to tell them, hey, go pick up those tennis shoes right there. And they're going to like it. Me, I'm going to feel it's an invasion of my privacy. How did you know that, right? However, the younger generation, they're not going to miss a beat on that. So, and I tell my kids, whatever you put out there, assume everyone is going to read it. So don't put what you don't want somebody to read. That's all.
All right, I think we have time for one last question. Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to talk to Carol as well. I was the first CIO for Ireland, and I would like just to pivot the conversation maybe the other way around. We've been talking about open government data and it going out freely and openly and available. What are the opportunities for taking open government data, open data, and bringing them back inside the business to do the processing privately against what I would call private data? Because I know in Ireland they've got a fairly substantial database on what they call the live register, which is the unemployment data that's specifically personal and can be processed inside the private capability of the business.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because this is really where we see the primary use of open government data, because it's very unlikely that the citizens would want to take this data set and go and do some analysis on it. It's very unlikely to happen. Apart from these individuals that want to build some beautiful application and sell it for 900 million, whatever. But there's few of them. So my biggest usage for this open data is taking it in-house so that although it is anonymized at a high level in the public sphere, I can bring that in-house and summarize and impute categories internally to merge these data. And what I end up with is a hugely enriched data set that is going to drive better behavior between me and my customer, for instance. We're doing something similar in Turkey for a telco operator, where we are looking at behavior of people on Twitter, on Facebook, and we categorize that behavior with specific browsing patterns, etc., to bring that back in-house, categorizing the customer database to the same categories. For instance, my night owls, my housewives. You know, during the day, you know who browse what they do. During the night, you know who browse what they do. enriching that and then coming back with much better offers to the consumer. So the value of open data is not the data itself. The value of open data is the fact that it can be reused to enrich any experience you want from a customer perspective, from a risk perspective, from a fraud perspective. That is the real value, I think, of any data, and specifically open government data, because the governments are sitting with gold that if they just do a little small thing, it is anonymized to the effect that no one can impute where that came from, how that came about, etc. And that then can be used by the global community to start creating better consumer services, customer behavior services, etc. So this, for me, the next conversation we should have is not open data, but open value add. So what value did you bring to, and I'm glad to say actually that a lot of government organizations are already taking ownership of this and starting to build these complex analytical processes internally. So there's a lot of progressive thinking already to start adding this value, I think. It's a very good question.
Great, thank you. So I think our time is up, and are we having a coffee break? No, no coffee break. All right. Richard's keeping us on track. All right then, thank you panel, appreciate it.
I'm sorry to be a taskmaster, but we're going to have to bypass the coffee break for today and start the next session. So I'd like to invite the three speakers to the floor, Wyatt Cash, Eric Kavanaugh, and Ibrahim El-Badawi.
Just push the feedback form because they wouldn't mind filling that out.
Where's Ibrahim? Yeah, put it on the screen, please. I think while we're waiting for Ibrahim, there's a feedback form that's going to appear on your screen on your iPad. We would appreciate if you can fill that form out and then submit it to us online. Thank you. Abdulrahim. You bring up the three presentations?
Pardon?
Bring up the three presentations?
Yeah, yeah.
So please fill out the summary form for the feedback so we can get the good feedback. As I said, please take your time to input the feedback form on your screen and please submit it. This will give us some valuable feedback. We want to have a lot of interaction with the people in the audience, and I think this is a good opportunity for us to see if we're going in the right direction or not. Ready? Okay, we're going to start off our session. The session is Open Government and International, wrong one. Open Government, Open Data Strategy. We have 3 speakers. Eric Kavanaugh, who's the CEO of the Bloor Group from Texas. We have Wyatt Cash, who's the editor of Information Week Government, based in Virginia. And we have Ibrahim El Badawi, who's the CEO of Exantrium in Dubai. So our first speaker will be Eric Kavanaugh. I'll give you the floor, sir.